Don't go anywhere, Thomas. We're going to do that Q&A now. So I'm going to invite community member Nurhak to the stage, who's going to host this Q&A section with Thomas, Paul. Perfect. So I'll hand it over to you guys. And if there's any questions, put your hand up. I will run around with a mic.
Oh.
Hey.
Nice. Hey. Okay, I understand you can hear me clearly. So a couple of questions. One is from Pedro Mendez. And Pedro asks, can Umbraco Hardcore be seen as a core CMS in a DXP when there are some limitations with Umbraco packages?
That feels like an uncomfortable question.
I have a good answer for that. As I said in my talk, I just mentioned the two different editor groups, and maybe if you want to have a super rich editor experience because it's page composition, it's setting up, it's advanced web editing, then maybe Hardcore is not the right solution. But if you want structured content and the field types you have already in Umbraco is sufficient to do that structured content, then I would say by all means use Hardcore, because it takes away the infrastructure, it takes away a lot of the development and all that stuff that you don't need in that scenario. So of course it'll, as we saw in the roadmap, once we get custom properties and all that stuff, the Hardcore experience will be able to do the rich editor experience as well. But today certainly it has a place in a DXP. And not as a core CMS, because there's no such thing. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, it's okay.
But as a CMS, as a content management experience. That's my view.
I think, so off the top of my head, I can think of one example where I have seen Hardcore being used as that central piece of the kind of composable DXP, plugging together really interesting business functionality in a grown-up application that has large scale. There were challenges with it, but the challenges weren't because of the array of packages that were available to it. The challenges are what are being addressed or have been addressed just recently and will be addressed with Hardcore going forward around some of the kind of tooling infrastructure. And I think it was really interesting because Philip was talking about Hardcore yesterday. Yeah. He was talking about how it's the reliability of the platform is the unique selling point for Hardcore. It is also interesting, though, that we're seeing this this evolution of the core CMS to also have a headless element to it. I think that was really interesting to present on that yesterday at the partner event and mentioned again this morning about reuse of some of the REST API functionality that is going to be common to both core CMS and to Hardcore. So if you need some of that package functionality that you would get out of Hardcore, if you need the ability to be able to control all the infrastructure yourself, you'll have that in Core CMS. You won't have some of the cool premium features that you get out of the box with Hardcore that gives you that integration with the edge location, so when you hit save and publish, it scatters around the world and reduces the effort involved in plumbing together all of that infrastructure. You get that with Hardcore, but you get a choice. Yeah, I said earlier on, you get to choose the compromise that you want to make. Do you want to compromise on the price? Do you want to compromise on the functionality? It's up to you. You will be able to choose. You won't have to use a community package to do a headless implementation in Core CMS. It'll be up to you soon to be able to decide which you want to go with.
Excellent. Okay. So next question is from Rick Butterfield. And Rick is asking, where is the line drawn between us as developers simply building packages for Umbraco that connects to third parties and something that supports DXP?
I don't think there is that much of a hard line to be drawn here, but I do think there is an interesting proposition that HQ is following of implementing these point-to-point integrations themselves. Because what that gives HQ is the ability for people like me to take an RFP that comes in from a buyer, and they have a list as long as your arm of all of the features and functionality and integrations that they need their DXP platform to have. And I can now trivially tick HubSpot because they've done that one. I could always have ticked HubSpot because I've built the integration. But is that as strong an argument when I say as an individual partner that I've built a HubSpot integration, or is it stronger argument for the buyer that Umbraco has done that integration, albeit more lightweight and less functionally rich than mine? I think that ticking that box from HQ and that list of 100 integrations that Jesper wants to achieve over the next year is a really powerful statement to buyers to enable them to go, I've got these 3 platforms, and absolutely, Umbraco is a first-class citizen amongst that array of different options that I can buy from. Yep. Yeah, it's not a compromise on its integration capability.
I think as a developer, you have to ask yourself, the functionality that you're building, does that natively need to be in the CMS? That's the question that I have to admit, I'm not super much into the package community around Umbraco. I know of another CMS, which I know a bit about. But if it's the same, then we used to build everything into the CMS. We used to have services that were running in the CMS, importing users from, a user or a member database into a custom database somewhere else, which has nothing to do with content management, but it was still run in the CMS as a scheduled task or whatever it's called. And those kind of things don't belong in the CMS anymore. In a composable DXP, that belongs somewhere else. In a cloud service, you use a service bus, you use something else which is built for that as a microservice that runs on its own, because we don't want to contaminate. We've all been in upgrade hell because of these things, right? Yeah. Where we've tried to accomplish something with Umbraco which basically didn't fit into Umbraco.
From my experience, just to add to what you have just said, from my experience, I know that a lot of package developers, they are very active on social media, especially on Twitter. They always ask questions, get more feedback from the community, from Umbraco HQ and professionals like yourselves. I suppose it's going to be a community effort so that they can hopefully decide whether to put it into the core or create another package.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe the packages become smaller. Maybe the packages are just integrations to microservices because you don't want to put the logic in there. Maybe you have a Git repo or a NuGet package or something that fits into a standalone .NET service that you run on an app service somewhere. And then you have a package from Umbraco that integrates to that.
Yeah.
So instead of building everything into the package, you just kind of...
Yeah, there are actually quite a lot of nice examples. I know, again, quite a few community packages. They're now integrated into Umbraco because everybody needs them.
Yes.
And those package developers, they're just so kind to, let Umbraco HQ, put it into the source code. And it's again, I suppose, a common effort, like most things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see any more questions. Maybe we can wait a few more minutes.
Is there any questions in the audience? No one. Perfect. Okay, I'm coming. Put your hand up.
When a company starts to build their business as a composable business, and they select 20 different software as a service solutions, and then they build their business, how do they differentiate themselves from other businesses? Sometimes you need to have this edge over the other people in your business.
Absolutely.
And how do you do that if everybody is just composing?
Yep. Oh yeah, there's two parts to that. Obviously, if I think Lego is always my preferred reference here. Is does every Lego set look the same? No, because there's a lot of ways to compose the set from Lego bricks. So obviously you will be able to build different businesses even though you're using the same system and the same bricks. Secondly, I think, and also from the Gartner, what I talked about composable businesses, maybe the core business you have today becomes your less important business, and maybe a restaurant that used to have a restaurant have good service, maybe they close the restaurant completely and only do takeaway. Now, if that's the case, then their customer service depends heavily on the delivery service. Maybe they don't want to use as a service anymore. Maybe they want to hire their own delivery guys, because you all know how these delivery services, sometimes they're late and they never excuse themselves. It's always like, oh, it's busy today and all that stuff. And that's not what you want if that's your primary customer experience. Now, I think for a lot of restaurants, as a service, Volt, Just Eat, those kind of things, is a necessary evil. It's not necessarily a place they want to be. But I've also heard of restaurants that are completely, what is it called? Like not on premise, takeaway based, right? You only have a kitchen in an industry area somewhere that only does takeaway, and that's a whole new type of business popping up. I mean, I've never heard of it 10 years ago. I think that would be unthinkable. Now it's of course, it's a natural thing. And for those kind of restaurants where the delivery service is the primary customer experience, I would say maybe stop using as a service, maybe invest more in that, or at least use parts of it as a service. Maybe the website is okay to run as a service, but the delivery guys is, so split that up into multiple hexagons if you want. So,
where's the magic? The magic isn't in reusing the marketing automation platform. Why would you spend your money on the marketing automation technology? Why would you spend your money on any of those individual parts? There will be some magic in the business which does not arrive from those individual parts, and you'll be wasting money investing in those things if you want to build them yourself. By composing them together, then you can start to focus your money on what's left after you compose those elements together, to identify where in the customer journey am I going to differentiate myself from everybody else and inject my money into making me special compared to everybody else.
As I mentioned, we built tons of login solutions and databases with username, password, and we forgot to hash the password and security, blah, 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 and all that stuff, right? So we built tons of those. We're not making less money now just because we're using as a service for that. We're actually really well off after COVID and all that stuff. So it's the whole composable thing doesn't mean that we're spending less money developing stuff. What I would say is we're probably developing more of the valuable stuff and less of the infrastructure, boring stuff.
Completely.
So that's my take anyway.
I completely agree.
Great, sounds very much like the future, Any more questions?
Hang on, I'm coming.
Thank you. That's outstanding talk this morning, really interesting. I think one of the things I've observed over the last little while is consultancies leading the way in this, agencies lagging behind, or leaders of agencies lagging behind, people within those agencies lagging even further behind, and customers lagging maybe even further behind that in their thinking. The customer still comes and says, I want a CMS. And the natural response of the agency is, let me build you a CMS. I've got an Umbraco, I've got a Sitecore, I've got this, the next thing. I'd just be interested to hear your perspective on sort of changing that mindset and taking the customer and the team and the agency kind of with you on that journey.
So, as I said, that mindset shift, those 2 slides I had about business mindsets and IT mindsets, there's a reason that the right side doesn't say now, it says of the future. Because I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're in composable land. I mean, you had the slide of Gartner mentioning that composable is maybe 50-50 now.
Yes.
But
that's
I would probably argue that those 50% is probably not true composable. We're still away from building something that's truly composable.
And they're at the top of the market as well, aren't they? So their sample size is not looking at the set of all projects that are going on. They're focusing up on that top area. Yeah. So
I kind of like the metaphor of cogs. If you're in an agency, if you're in the bleeding edge of development, you're a little cog and you're spinning like crazy, and you're inventing things, and you're really driving development and all that stuff. And there's a little bit bigger cog that spins a little slower. Maybe that's the bigger agencies, and then you've got the customers. That's the huge cog. And once you've spun 500 times, they probably just did one rotation. They still haven't grasped what a DXP is. Now we're talking composable DXPs. Tomorrow, we used to talk headless. Nobody talks about headless anymore. Now it's all composable. Now it's all DXP. And the customer's still behind, didn't you say headless yesterday? Now it's composable. What's the difference? And so I think we have to remember that once in a while, that you have to repeat the same thing again and again to make sure you get the understanding behind it. So that's my take anyway. I spend a lot of time doing that in my own company, is being the little cog and trying to explain it to the other guys.
Would you like to add
No, I can't better that. Can't better that at all.
Right, I can't see any more questions here.
There is one more question. David Clark.
Oh yeah, I can see it now. Yep, I can see it now. So David Clark, David is asking, doesn't this increase complexity for clients having to manage support and costs across a wide range of providers? How about the complexity of support when independent systems upgrade?
Yes.
It's the one throat choke argument, isn't it? It's the inverse of that. You've got to balance where your benefit lies. Do you want to reduce the complexity by concentrating all of the relationship with a single vendor, or do you want to manage that in your business and have a diversity of vendors and the issues that arise from that? And how many of those clients, many of those clients that are going to be making that decision will be managing that relationship direct themselves. They won't be mediated by another agency, but there's no doubt that agencies will support and help them with mediating those complex decisions.
And I would mention there's even software as a service that helps you manage software as a service. So now we've got vendors that are living in the space of managing other as a services. So you can hook in all this as a service guys, and you can have one central support system, one central cost management system in a software as a service that runs other software as a service. So things are being solved. As I said, the composable future looks brighter and brighter every day because those things are being settled. But definitely, yes, right now, complexity is a problem. It's growing.
But I'm not convinced, though, that the opposite is any less complex. It just looks conceptually simpler. But you are building still a lot of complex. When you've got a lot of these requirements, even from a single venue, you're building them into a single place. But
you're absolutely right, and I think it's on the eyes of the beholder, right? Because we used to sell. I used to sell a lot of Sycor to the IT departments because it was a brilliant solution. You only had to install one system and you'd have everything. And they would go to the marketing guys and they say, now you have marketing automation, you have analytics, you have customer data platform, you have CMS, you have website, and we've all installed it for you. It's ready to run. Now the complexity would be in the marketing department trying to get that.
How frustrated would they be? Because it took so long to choose.
Now it's opposite, right? The marketing department says, we bought these 10 different systems. We're thrilled. It works. It's great. The agencies have solved all our problems. And the IT department is going,
governance. Oh, my God.
Now we have to manage this, cost management, support, compliance, all that stuff. And that's where we as agencies have to be better at understanding IT compliance, IT security, IT cost management, those kind of things, which we really didn't have to worry about last year. But now, when we install HubSpot, we have to make sure that it's compliant, it's secure, it's in the right data center, GDPR, all that stuff, right?
Talking about all these different components, do you think like agencies could benefit from maybe creating some plans for themselves for different types of their clients? Because I also work for an agency, like you generally develop like similar stuff for different customers. Maybe when you go to your client, you can say, look, here is a package which will...
And you have that?
So
you
I
have
did
that?
it. I had it on the board, and then you talked, and my toes are curling, and I have a crisis of confidence. Oh my God, what have I done? I put on stage a monolithic DXP and called it a composable because I've chosen the components that work for me. So,
But we've done the same thing.
Yeah, it's a
because
pattern.
To my knowledge, customers don't give anything about the cloud they run on. Or I would say any customers, but a lot of customers are happy to run on Azure.
Yeah.
Maybe just we'll choose. We'll
Yeah.
just say, we've got it. We've got the Azure DevOps pipelines. We've got the repo. We've got Azure. We've got Terraform to spin it up. We've got Umbraco as the CMS. We've got Next as a website. We've got all that stuff, and we pre-built it for you. Do you want to start here, or do you want to start from the front? Because we can also build an AWS with Sitecore and like all that other stuff, but that would just take 1,000 hours, and then we'll get to the fun bit. And most customers say, sure, we can live with Next, we can live with Umbraco, we can not live with, but we're happy with Umbraco, we're happy with Azure, we're happy with those kind of things. And of course, there's always the customers that says, no, we cannot run on Azure. And that's where you have one hexagon, you tear that out, you put in another one.
That's where the interesting conversation lies, doesn't it? It can be really hard to start with a blank sheet of paper. Yeah, when you're having a conversation with a new client and you literally are starting from nothing and trying to figure out where the blocks are, and I think the pattern that I showed would be, well, okay, brilliant. So you want this? This would be how I would do it, but you don't want that bit? Oh, I get that. Yeah, so you don't want HubSpot because you've already got Salesforce. Okay, well, that's fine. Well, we'll take that out, as you say, and it shortcuts the conversation. But you still have the flexibility to swap the Lego bricks.
Yeah, I mean, we have customers that have thousands of editors that are working in the CMS every day, and do I want Umbraco for that? Maybe not. Maybe I want multiple Umbracos. So every build is different, but having a starting point and having a technology stack that you recommend is a good starting point. Now it's easier with a composable architecture. It's easier to pull something out and replace it with something else.
There are multiple Umbracos, maybe depending on the Umbraco version, by the way. Right. Any more questions, please? I've got one question, if you don't mind, please. So my understanding from DXP is I'm quite new to DXP, but it's all about like integrating things like in a very short amount of time or in a shorter amount of time rather than writing things again and again. And also like if you need to change something in the future, hopefully it should be much easier to change it. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I would say for the first part that you say you don't understand DXP, I would say you probably do, because you've been building DXP. DXP is just a concept of a platform that runs an experience digitally. And that's what we've all been doing on top of Umbraco for many years. I don't really like the slide where you said Umbraco is a composable DXP, because it's not really. The composable DXP is the greater picture. But it certainly has been a DXP, has been a key part of a DXP. So we've all been building DXPs for many years now. Instead of having it called a CMS solution, now it's a DXP. So just change the taxonomy, change the terminology into DXP.
Yeah.
Composability is another point, because that's a mindset. That's a new shift in mindset. So that's composable DXP is a shift into not only composing it of different integrations, because you can integrate yourself to a monolith easily. It's the integration strategy that you use. It's the standards, it's the cloud services as a service, those kind of things that separates a truly composable from a monolithic DXP.
So it's like, don't panic, things can change, so you can hopefully swap things.
The key thing is architects, right? It's architects that needs to understand, and not the developers.
Yeah.
I mean, from my history, from my knowledge, the developers are much happier working with a one microservice. They can work with Postman, they can have a small code base, they know the requirements, they can test it, it runs, boom, done. Whereas if I change something over here, it might break something over here, is a nightmare for all of us, right?
When you say We've been building this for a long time. We just haven't called it that. It puts me in mind of conversations when Neil stood up and talked about headless and said, oh, Umbraco's been doing headless for years. We just didn't call it headless. Yeah. We've been doing DXP for years. We just haven't called it DXP. Yeah. The moment that it moves beyond that simple content site to something with interesting interactions and interesting outcomes, that's when you've taken that step into that kind of DXP world where you've got something more interesting than just the pure content. Yeah. And then how do you do that? Do you build it all inside one, or do you bring bits of functionality from different places and plug together the bits that you like, for want of a better way?
And changing the name allows us as architects to talk to the customer in a different way. Because if you call it your CMS solution, it kind of stifles the conversation. Whereas a DXP, as I showed you with the naming on the hexagons, you can put whatever business objectives you want in there, as long as it drives a digital experience. It doesn't have to be a website. Doesn't have to do with content. Maybe it's an app that does something that has static content, God forbid. But it's the changing the terminology can allow us to have different conversations.
Yeah, so that clients can understand us better, I suppose, so can deliver better software. Right, any more questions, please? We still have got time.
I hope you're all completely understanding of what a composable DXP is now. And, the mayor should have been here, then he would have known it.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Give a big warm thank you to Paul, to Thomas, and Nuhak.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you're here in the venue, it is time for lunch. So start going behind here. You'll find lunch. Go and find a drink. I think the sun may be out, so maybe find a spot in the sun and enjoy that. Otherwise, people online, have fun. We'll see you around.